Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Doug.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And this is Good Suffering. Welcome to Season 2.
Ew, Season 2! We did it!
An unplanned season change because we took a month off.
We're going to go ahead and just say that this is now seasons, apparently, because the first year we did it was
we're
one
almost
season now, I guess. Yeah. So why not? Yeah, Season 2. Cool. We got brought back.
Yeah, we got renewed.
We did.
Oh my God. Thank you to all of our sponsors and our host network.
So glad you guys are keeping us busy.
But this is the first of our Cronenberg episodes, our 3-part series on David Cronenberg's horror filmography.
Starting 2019 off in a huge way. We promised it.
Yeah, we've been teasing this for like a couple months.
Yeah, didn't expect it to take till February.
Should have been over this by now.
Yeah.
But either way, we are back. And before we jump into our 4 films today, that being Shivers, Rabid, The Brood, and Scanners, we're going to just talk about our 2019 goals. Give it a little change up from the normal horror news or horror views.
Horror views. Not today, though.
No, not today. So what do you want to see Good Suffering be at the end of this year? What do you want yourself to be as a horror fan at the end of this year?
Oh, so this isn't about my fitness goals.
Oh.
No?
Can I talk about my gear goals?
No, we're definitely not talking about that. Let's see. For me as a horror fan, I guess I'll address first. I'll say that I am definitely interested in seeing more foreign stuff, more foreign horror movies. And I think that comes from me just wanting to see more foreign movies in general. For instance, like I saw that I think Cold War is an Oscar nominee for foreign picture right now for 2019 Oscars. And also the director of that film, same director of Ida, is nominated. And I realized like I haven't actually seen Ida. I watched, I spoiled the whole movie for myself by watching like analyses on that movie, and I really want to see Cold War. And I'm just realizing that I don't watch a lot of foreign movies. So, and I know that there's a lot of foreign horror movies out there. I know that you're a big fan of quite a few.
I'm going to do all my Japanese stuff this year.
Yeah, I know that was coming. So yeah, that's pretty much my personal horror movie goal. And for the show, just to, I don't know, get it out there even more. I think like the first season, I guess since we'll call it that now, was a bit of a learning period a little bit.
Right.
Trying to figure out what we were doing, how sincerely, like how motivated we are to do it, like how long we're going to continue to do it. And
clearly not very motivated because we've been gone for a fucking month.
But since we are doing it, and we do know, you and I, at least I think, we both actually really want to grow this. We want to see this become something much bigger than, ourselves and much bigger than the listeners we already have.
I would like a legion, like an entire legion of very cult-like followers by the end of this year.
Is it cool to go on record to say you want a cult-like following? Like that's
at least nobody can say they're surprised when it happens.
No, they would. What they wouldn't be surprised about is like it going to your head. They'd be
it
like,
will
no,
go to my
like
head.
No, of course, like he wanted this.
I love my fans. I love my fans. No pictures, no autographs. Sorry, I love my fans.
Yeah, there's something like so uncool about that.
Yeah. When Taylor's girlfriend approached me in that parking lot, it was simultaneously very frightening and also like everything I ever wanted in my life.
Oh, yeah.
I want to be murdered by a crazy fan.
She was like, oh my God, are you Doug from Good Suffering?
And I was like, oh, I'm either getting mugged, killed, or something. I don't know, but I love it.
Yeah. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind that, but I'm not the one saying it.
Would you carry on the show without me?
If you got murdered by a fan?
Yes.
Yes.
I would like it to go on, but in a much lesser version of itself.
No. If anything, I would do it bigger and better.
Like Bon Scott dying and then like AC/DC gets Stadium Rock sound.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's gonna be Arena Rock fucking good suffering.
Yeah,
once
no,
I die.
precisely. We're gonna sell out shows, like literal theaters, to do this live. That's how.
Oh,
That's how
boy.
big I'm aiming.
And people are gonna be like, yeah, you know, they got really big after, but like I really liked when it was small and intimate.
The thing is, though, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna push for that until after you're dead.
Okay,
So if you're still alive, we're gonna keep it really small.
I'm cool with that. Lo-fi, baby.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, there are definitely gonna be stickers coming soon. That's 2019.
Right.
That
yeah.
should have been a 2018.
Hold on. I'm
thing.
sorry. Let me ask you your goals, and I know that was one that you have for the show.
Yeah.
Any others for the show, and maybe a few for yourself?
For myself, I would definitely like to get back to watching some new stuff. I've been actually slacking on that a bit lately. And by not new stuff, new old stuff, older films I haven't seen. I tend to
New
really,
to you.
New to me, yeah. I tend to really like gravitate towards, oh, well, this just came out on Shudder, or this just got a release, you know, things like that. And I think I need to get back to discovering some older gems.
Right on.
Yeah.
Cool. And for the show, you said stickers.
Stickers, definitely.
Cool.
I have a really cool idea for some stickers.
We're just gonna plant them everywhere and hand them out and stuff.
Well, yeah. I'd like to go to some horror cons and stuff too.
That's a good goal. I forgot about that. Yeah, absolutely. Would love to go to some horror cons.
Get you definitely up the field trip game that we got, because we started off real strong.
It was
we
cool.
did good.
It was cool. We should definitely do a lot more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about it. Honestly, just hope to see it grow and hope to get some more. I want more reviews on iTunes. That's my call to action.
Give us reviews. Exactly. This is our rallying call to you guys. We know there's more of you out there that have left reviews, and we know that.
Yeah, we've crunched the numbers.
We've done it. We've done the math. So please give us some reviews and share it with your friends. Gosh dang it. Let them know what you're interested in.
It helps the show. It helps our egos, you know. But
Mainly
it
the
really
egos.
does, you know. The iTunes and Stitcher and whatnot algorithms, they really are dependent on reviews and ratings. So, you know, if you like us and you want more people to hear what we're doing, then you definitely should do that. That's your very free, very fast way of helping the show out.
And not for nothing. I mean, I think also it lets us know to keep going. So like if we see that a lot of people are responding and a lot of people are just genuinely interested in what we have to say every episode, then we know, like, okay, like let's continue.
Definitely an affirmation that this is good. Yeah. I would also like to have somebody carve the name of the show into their forehead. So before we dive into the first of these films, let's give a little bit of background on David Cronenberg. How much do you know about him? From Wikipedia.
I know a lot.
Oh, good. Go for it.
Honestly, because I watched a lot of interviews. I read up a lot of essays and interviews also. Yeah. Do you want me to tell you who he is and all that? Like,
I don't know who the fuck this guy is.
So from what I understand, he's a Canadian. He aspired to be a novelist first and foremost,
or like a biologist, specifically working with insects.
That part I didn't know.
That was a big thing for him growing up, and he actually has a pretty wide knowledge of like insect biology and anatomy, which you'll see later in films like The Fly,
right?
And of course, you know.
Okay.
Videodrome is particularly insecty in the way that it, it's, transformations very gooky and gross.
I'm sorry, what movie?
Videodrome?
I don't know that.
Oh yeah,
because we're not talking about that yet. Yeah. So he wanted to be a novelist, I guess, biologist too. And like I said, he's from Canada, where there wasn't much of a horror,
a film
legacy
scene,
there.
A
yeah,
film
like
scene
at
whatsoever.
all.
Yeah. This predates like Black Christmas and whatnot, which sort of put Canada on the map.
Yeah, and he made like 2 short films, or no, 2 like feature-length films, but like I think
they were like an hour long each.
Right. And that kind of like got his feet wet, and he ended up writing a script. For I believe it was for Shivers,
originally titled "Orgy of the Blood Parasites."
Yeah, and he says, like, in so many interviews, anytime any of these movies are brought up or his whole career is brought up, he mentions how like this movie was funded by a group in Canada.
Yeah, the Canadian government. Yeah,
yeah,
because they were trying to not only encourage art, which is the thing that we should probably do here in this country instead of taking funding away from PBS, but Cronenberg actually had such a hard time trying to make films in the beginning that he was very close to moving to L.A. to pursue
Yeah.
filmmaking there. 'Cause
That was a cool story.
There wasn't even any like film school in Canada at the time.
And who was I heard his name millions of times. I heard it like twice today. Corman?
Roger Corman.
Yeah, Corman obviously like a huge guy for like B movies.
Yeah.
Even like has some history back with like Scorsese. Even was going to fund Cronenberg to make his movies in L.A.
Yeah.
But just at the same time, Canada pulled through, and I think he's all the better for it, honestly, because
Yeah.
I don't know what he would have become had he been around Hollywood.
A quote unquote American filmmaker.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Roger Corman actually wound up being the distributor for Shivers when it came out in America.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Like,
early.
that's when it came out, like in the 80s or something. It was like 89 or something like that.
No, it had come out in the
90s.
70s.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
In the U.S.
Yeah.
I remember when I was looking at Amazon, like the
Maybe
title.
that's just the transfer or that specific
Yeah.
whoever they got the rights from.
But it
got
was
then.
later though. This certainly wasn't widespread until much later. And now it's got cult-like stuff, cult-like kind of success. His earlier movies, most of the movies that we're doing today, everything up until Scanners.
Yeah, it's definitely like smaller. Cronenberg. This is a really, really good. This episode and to an extent the next episode are really, really connected films. This episode especially.
Yeah, I can tell for this one for sure. The next episode remains to be seen. I've only seen one of them.
But Cronenberg is noted for his very singular vision and his use of certain tropes over and over again. And we're gonna explore all that today. So you want to kick it off with Shivers?
Shivers, this first one that we were doing today. Like I said, he has like two smaller movies.
Yeah, we're not going to do Stereo or Crimes of the Future. Right. I did actually wind up watching his two very, very early short films. Are about like around 10 minutes apiece, and part of Stereo, just to watch them. But I wouldn't even say that I saw much in them that would add to this discussion. So
I will say too that I actually saw Maps of the Stars in this liminal period where we weren't taping.
Right.
I don't know if that really applies to any of this. It still sticks with some themes that will come up in this episode even, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
But yeah, so, okay. You want to go into the IMDb synopsis?
Not sponsored. Still
not sponsored.
Maybe by season 3.
Yeah.
Maybe by season 3.
We got our fingers crossed. All right, so this is for Shivers. The residents of a suburban high-rise apartment building are being infected by a strain of parasites that turn them into mindless, sex-crazed fiends out to infect others by the slightest sexual contact.
That sounds like you for the past year.
Oh my God, just throwing me under the bus.
Right on the podcast.
Right,
too.
yeah, on air.
I'm not cutting that one.
Thanks. Thanks for that, buddy.
That's an all right one. Yeah, pretty to the point.
Yeah, I have no comment on that anymore. We're gonna move right on.
Yeah,
that's a good description of the movie, not of me.
So, what'd you think of it? I know this was the last of the 4 that you wound up watching.
So I wanted to say that first and foremost. I watched these movies totally out of order, and I wish I hadn't. I wish I started with this.
You went basically backwards, or no? Did you do Scanners Rabid Brood or Scanners Brood Rabid?
Scanners. No, I went backwards. No. I did Scanners Rabid Brood and then Shivers.
Okay. I did them in order.
Oh wow, look at me. I'm Doug. Anyway, yeah, I wish I did because then I would have gotten more sense of the progression quite a bit. I don't know why I chose the movies I did in that order. I was not even thinking straight. But the reason I say that is because it has a lot to it that will play a bigger part later on in the other movies. Specifically like in Rabid, where to me it's almost like a spiritual sequel. Like there's not much different between the two movies.
Says you.
I don't think so. Shivers though, I think it's a pretty gritty, pretty like non-technical first like debut movie. Not much story wise either, but it's still a very cool experience to watch this infection slowly develop in an isolated area and in one building. That also kind of packs a punch in terms of analysis on, I guess, maybe Canadian like world, the kind of society. I'm straight. I don't want to say society, but it's Canadian like citizenship and society, and the way people maybe look at more elite, because this apartment high rise that they live in is pretty glamorous.
Yeah, they actually do some really good exposition at the beginning of the movie by sort of showing almost like a commercial.
Yeah, it's like
for
a
the
slideshow.
Starliner apartments,
Yeah.
and it looks very beautiful, very modern for its time. And by the end of the movie, it just feels very claustrophobic, and it feels like it's really a hotbed for some evil activity and some spooky activity.
Yeah, already like in that slideshow, I got that feeling. I was like, look, this is like a cool place to live. But you already know that it's a recipe for disaster when something like this happens.
Yeah. Well, what I really like about this film in particular is that it really, really, in a very unique way, embraces both its like art house influences and its like B movie quality.
Fair, yeah.
This movie was under a lot of titles, like a lot of B movies were. This was also put out under They Came From Within and The Parasite Murders, and excuse me for massacring the French title, but Frisons.
Oh, you mean Frisson?
Frisons. And that's where the title Shivers comes from, because that's, I think, a rough translation.
Yeah, it's yeah. I don't know French.
Motherfucker. And this is definitely a very Canadian feature. All of these, at least the first three of these, are very Canadian features, featuring what is not just a Cronenbergian trope, but a Canadian trope of the Canadian hero, which is just the very ineffectual male at the center of each story. If you look at all three, you look at the main male character doesn't really do anything and is just sort of reacting to chaos that he can't control.
I can't think so much for Rabid.
That would be her boyfriend, I would say, or possibly the doctor. But yeah, definitely her boyfriend more than anything. Hart, I think his name was. But we'll get there.
Yeah.
But Roger St. Luc, I think that's his full name of that's the doctor in
Right.
this.
Very
and-
much a 70s looking doctor.
Ooh, yeah, with the blonde mop top,
and
man.
like the sideburns.
Yeah. And you start to see a lot of Cronenbergian tropes. And that's sort of what we're going to connect these movies with, are these tropes that he will use time and time again and switch and do different things to. And you'll see that some from Shivers will bleed over into Rabid, and then, they'll be dropped, but some new ones will be brought over into the Brood. And there definitely is like a certain process and flow to these films. Such as the Mad Doctor, working on a like an innocent young, very very pretty female, and
Often pretty like virginal too.
yeah, with very virginal qualities. Yeah, especially in Rabid, I would say.
Especially in this. I mean, it was
The Annabelle girl, right?
Yeah, she was like a legit
until she becomes a
schoolgirl.
sex fiend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, is I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure if it's explicitly stated, but Annabelle was probably a bit underage, right? She looked very young.
That was something that was very unsettling. Was that I wasn't sure. Like in the first scene when he's like attacking her, I'm not sure how old she's supposed to be. She's got a uniform, but she's also like, she looks like she's older, so I'm not entirely sure. And then later on, we hear like about the backstory about like how he had met her before at school, and that she was like, and I think the phrasing was like that she was 14. Now I don't know if it was like 14 at the time when they met, and like this is later, or like she was 14 was meaning that when she was alive
at the time of her death.
Right. So I really don't know, but I think it's fair to assume anyway, nonetheless, that she was probably underage, maybe not 14, but certainly not an adult.
Yeah. Certainly in this.
And that comes up again later with the little girl
in the
lobby.
elevator.
Yeah, well, she's the one that was in the elevator, and then she like kisses like the front desk guy or the security officer.
Yeah.
And she's very very plainly a child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They Cronenberg was definitely trying to push some buttons with
He
that. And
certainly was.
Anything that he could kind of deconstruct, he was doing.
And he doesn't mind being transgressive. Like he said that like in an interview, like that art, like any good art worth its salt, needs to be a little at least transgressive. Right. Otherwise, it's not making any kind of statement on anything. It's just aesthetic.
Yeah, well, Cronenberg is certainly punching you in the face with
yes.
That. This the Parasite itself is really interesting, and that itself becomes sort of a Cronenbergian trope in that he mixes sexuality with the grotesque. And when you look at the parasite, it almost looks like a cross between like a penis and like a piece of shit. And like you'll see that in Rabid and the Brood and a lot of things where he's mixing what should be pleasurable with something that's grotesque. And in the same way that they're sex fiends, but it's not just like it's not like a one of those 60s like sex comedies where everybody's just having sex and there's know shitty jokes. They are literally like ravenous and nearly murderous and sometimes very murderous with their
and
sex craze.
To go back to the idea of like how there's this grotesque aspect to something that's pleasurable, literally sex. There's that dream that Forsyth talks about. Am I jumping too far ahead? No? Okay. Forsyth being the nurse, she talks about a dream where she's like having sex with like an old, balding, stinky, smelly, all around not attractive guy.
One of my favorite scenes in the film is this whole monologue that she gives.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's I feel like it just encapsulates everything about the movie. And I have like a direct quote, some lines cut out. She says, "Everything is erotic." This is what she's like had learned.
Right.
This is what the old man is saying to her in a dream.
Right. And this is her. This is, if I'm, you correct me if I'm wrong. This is right before she's like kind of revealed that she's turned.
Right before she like goes and lunges for the doctor, Roger. So she says, "Everything is erotic. Everything is sexual. Even old flesh is erotic flesh. Even dying is an act of eroticism."
I have that one written down.
That talking is sexual. That breathing is sexual. That even to physically exist is sexual. And that basically ends with her actually, having sex with the old man in her dream. Like she realizes, okay, he's right, and then she does that. And I feel like that is not only a big part of this movie of Shivers, but of a lot of what Cronenberg has to say. Even if it's not like the central focus of the movie, like this comes up over and over again. Even Maps of the Stars, like it's not a horror movie per se. But you still see sex as violent or gruesome.
And if you want to even break that down even more, another thing Cronenberg likes to do is sort of mix philosophy with the physical. And when you look at the doctor, his name is Hobbs, was the doctor who kills Annabelle, who sets the whole thing off. His whole goal is that he wants to bring people back to that state, that way of thinking with the parasite.
Right.
And by making that parasite, that's a physical,
causing an orgy.
That's a physical, scientific thing that he makes. You know what I mean? But that somehow also infects you with a philosophy. And that connection of the body and the mind is just like literally what Cronenberg is known for. And you're starting to see the seeds of that in this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. You want to talk about philosophy?
I mean, I don't think we can do these without, talking about at least philosophy on a base level.
Oh, I love it. This is it. This is why I'm excited about Cronenberg Film School, because there's a lot of it to go around. And a lot of like Freudian stuff coming up, especially in this episode with The Brood.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Sure.
Yeah, no, exactly. 100%. Like there is this like connection of the human body and like its limitations and how people try to overcome those limitations one way or another. Like the premise was that this I'm blanking on the word, the bug, the
parasite.
Parasite, there we go. The parasite was supposed to like basically heal a person when they're ailing. It was
right. That was sort of like the guise that it was under, right? That was his research.
Like just let the parasite live in you and like kind of clean your system out.
It was almost like an organ. I think they explained it as a parasite organ.
Right. And that's the whole premise. And like that concept of like just being better than a human can possibly be right now. Just trying to advance what humanity is. And it's such a small project, it being in this building. Which in the end, spoiler alert, ends up infecting the whole town outside of the island.
Yeah, going into, is that Toronto or Montreal? Or
I think it was Montreal.
Yeah. And it's just this incredible. It's this incredible flip of like, and there's a lot of flips, of like what I guess at the time the most notable horror film going on would have probably been Night of the Living Dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was very revolutionary for being modern in a time when like Hammer horror was coming out and everything was castles and, you know, ancient Dracula kind of things.
Yeah.
And it was sort of flipping it on its head because you look at the zombies, the ghouls in Night of the Living Dead, and they're shambling and they're clearly there is something wrong with them. But at the end of Shivers, when they're all driving, they're all together, they're
Yeah.
couples driving out, and they're just going to do their thing.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting flip of that, and you'll see him with this and Rabid flip a lot of what Night of the Living Dead was doing even before Dawn of the Dead came out, and playing with things that Dawn of the Dead would later get much more famous than either of these movies for playing with. And I cannot believe that we have gone this long without saying the fucking phrase body horror.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? We have not
True.
said body horror yet, and that is absolutely what this is.
Oh my god.
Because, again, with Night of the Living Dead, that is like a societal fear. You know what I mean? That is the mindless hordes coming to bang on your door, and you're the only one who's normal.
And they're coming
is
to bang you.
It's coming from within.
Yeah.
It is the
That was
enemy
my attempt
within.
at a joke. I'm sorry.
You are the danger. You know what I mean? It's your body.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is.
I love it.
He really is playing with some really interesting things.
And it's like it's not as if it's too heady or anything. No character really just harps on like this whole philosophical monologue or anything.
Right.
Like, it's not about
They
like
even-
this is you have to. It's like not a thinker's film. It's not dumb,
Right.
But it's not like
it's not
all
art
cerebral.
house pure. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And I like that a lot about him. Like there's a lot that you can,
They-
uncover from his movies, but they don't necessarily demand that you do that.
They work on a base level as well. They work as just pure enjoyment.
And that's the cool part of the body horror aspect.
Yeah.
Like it's just almost something inherent about how deep and philosophical that can get. Which brings me to something that I thought was very, very familiar to me in this movie. There was one part in particular that really stuck out when I don't have his name here, do I? I just call him in my notes. Oh, Nick. Right? Yeah, he's like the main guy at least. He's like the guy that
he's the one who
initially-
looks like Cronenberg.
Exactly. In my notes, in my notes, he's Cronenberg lookalike.
Yeah. Of this one, there's always a Cronenberg lookalike in all these
Yeah.
fucking movies.
He's like coughing up over the balcony of like his apartment.
Right.
And like the blood, or I guess the actual little parasite, lands on this old lady's umbrella as she's walking with her friend. And there was something so quirky, so funny about that moment, that reminded me a lot of I might butcher his name here, but Yorgos Lanthimos.
Lanthimos, yeah.
Yeah. It reminded me so much of like his movies, like mainly like The Lobster, like the way it was framed even. And I feel like if someone were to make this today that wasn't Cronenberg, like this, it would honestly be him. I feel like he's definitely has some influences from specifically Cronenberg's earlier movie like this. But yeah, that I was thinking of that because his movies too are like art house. They do kind of lead to you interpreting no matter what. Like if you're engaged with the movie, you're going to interpret certain things. You're going to try to look for metaphors. But again, they don't necessarily demand that you have to follow everything and start taking notes or something like that. It's
Right.
just
you don't need a film theory degree
exactly
in order to enjoy these.
And he
yeah.
even says like he doesn't even like humoring most questions because it's like it doesn't matter. It's the movie. It is what it is.
Right. You know who J. Robert Oppenheimer is? Oppenheimer. He's the man who created the atomic bomb, and then he spent like the rest of his life just like miserable of
that's
what
why
he's
I think
done.
it sounded familiar. Okay,
And
yeah.
the sort of the idea is that you spend so long seeing if you could do something that you don't know if you should. That is also another trope that begins with this movie, because clearly Hobbes, the murder of Annabelle and then his suicide is him realizing that he's created something monstrous and apocalyptic. And there's definitely like a view to a lot of these films, and we'll not just these four, but like you will go into the next episode and even like all the way through this series, seeing that there is this trope of just like I didn't realize the consequences for this thing that I've done, especially coming from doctors.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I didn't really think of it that way in terms of like self-awareness of like, oh, I should not have done that. Right. I kind of just saw it simply as like this is like the human folly.
And spoiler alert, especially in all these four movies and continuing on, the person who causes all this dies because of it in each film. Each of the films. All the doctors in all four movies.
I don't know about... Scanners.
Scanners, because Revik's guy,
I think that brings him in.
yeah, he kills him. He shoots him in the back of the head.
Yeah. True. Shit, you're right.
Yep.
Look at that.
So you see, Cronenberg definitely has a set of ideas that he is just always playing with.
And though they're never like really the same movies, aside from Rabid, because I'm going to continue saying that until you prove me otherwise, he does have these particular themes that he likes to stick with, and they're cool. They're worthwhile. I don't think one movie is enough to say what he has to say.
Right.
Evidently.
So do you want to talk about sort of the you want to start to weave this both historically and in theory into Rabid? Start moving that way.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, on a historical basis, not only are these next two films very heavily inspired by Canadian events, Shivers being, I mean, he won't say that he hasn't said that he specifically had this in mind, but Canada has a very long history of pretty grotesque malpractice. And a long history.
Shivers, you're saying?
For Shivers, yeah.
Wow, okay.
And I guess in all these movies Canada has a long history of like doctors not telling patients what they're going to do to them, and experimenting and things like that.
Damn.
Which you definitely see in these films, which are very intensely Canadian. And also, you'll see that Rabid definitely brings back. Do you know the October Crisis?
Is that the thing that happened like in Canada?
That's
like,
the thing that happened in Quebec with the
rising
of the like a radical political party.
Yeah.
And martial law was declared in Quebec, and you definitely see that towards the end of Rabid that they're and Cronenberg has said that was an influence on where Rabid goes.
And he even said like that like this was like the one time in history, in Canada's history, that's happened. And that's so strange to me that like this
at least
country,
up until that point, I think there was something. Wasn't there a mosque shooting in Quebec?
But martial law, like on the scale, where like
martial law,
and that's just so crazy. Being an American, thinking like you not seeing cops like on the street take the streets like that, and like full on huge Hummers and tanks and shit.
Yeah,
like not that I've seen.
They're in malls with machine guns. You know what I mean? This mall security is
like I'm not saying I saw martial law. We haven't seen that in my lifetime, but you do see like heavily armed like units.
Yeah, go to Washington D.C. You'll see police with machine guns around the more political areas of Washington D.C. But that's definitely something that Canada is disconnected from.
Yeah, it's so strange. It's unfortunate that it's strange. That shouldn't be something that's common. But here you are.
And for Cronenberg, this film was probably his most. He suffered the most consequences for this one, because not only did it take him. It didn't take him a long time to find funding, but it was very hard to find funding for Rabid, because although this was the only, up to that point, Canadian-funded film to actually make its money back, there was a huge uproar. There was one article in particular called "You Should Know How Bad This Film Is. After all, you paid for it."
Because of the taxes.
Yes. And it was considered smut. It was considered garbage, just overly sexual, violent, it pushed buttons. And he was actually kicked out of his apartment, too, because his landlord heard about the film and knew that he made it. And there was some kind of weird morality clause in his lease, and he was evicted. Wow. Yeah.
But like, to be fair, though, I mean, writing that kind of article is like just bullshit.
It was an attack piece, even less. I read it as an attack piece, even less on Cronenberg and more on the film board and this. I don't remember her name, but a certain woman who was the person who pushed for them to have a film funding.
Yeah, but so like, despite it being like this kind of like mudslinging sort of piece, I think there's some criticism that's kind of fair. This isn't completely like smut, but like, I mean, the cards are kind of stacked against Cronenberg on this one. Mainly it being like, led by a pretty prominent female porn star.
No, I'm talking about Shivers.
Oh, was Shivers was the one that was written the article about?
Yes.
Oh. Yes. I thought it was for Rabid.
No, but he did definitely suffer some, backlash on the fact that he casted a porn star.
Right, yeah. I think that was kind of like, that's why Rabid was like...
He originally tried to cast Sissy Spacek in the role.
Yeah.
But the producer of Rabid, Ivan Reitman, who later goes on to make Ghostbusters, he didn't like that she had a Texas accent, which she certainly does. Did you ever watch Three Women?
I still haven't. No.
No? Oh man, that's
know, I'm
great.
sorry.
And her and Shelley Duvall really get to lay
I
into
really
their accents and their
wanna see
voices.
them. I love them both.
Awesome. That's just a shout out for everybody. Like, go check out Three Women, Robert Altman film from the 73, 4, something like that.
And then Sissy went on to do Carrie.
Sissy goes on to do Carrie, yeah,
Which-
which you will definitely see, reflections of in Scanners.
Mm. Yeah, true.
And The Brood to an extent, but, yeah. Let's get on to Rabid.
All right, this is from 1977.
Yep.
Synopsis. A young woman develops a taste for human blood after undergoing experimental plastic surgery, and her victims turn into rabid, bloodthirsty zombies who proceed to infect others, which turns into a citywide epidemic.
Now,
That's
before
a weirdly structured sentence.
but before we get into anything else, I'd like to point something out about Rabid,
Sure.
which is that this is the first time Cronenberg predicts the future. Because if you look at that experimental surgery, what he's really predicting is stem cell research. Because what they're doing is they take the skin grafts from her leg and they're neutralizing it so it doesn't know what kind of tissue it is, so it can grow into anything they want it to be, which is what stem cell research kind of is.
And
Cronenberg has a knack for predicting the future. Existenz is a big one too.
And oh yeah, you know what? There's actually he does. Oh my god, he does.
Motherfucker predicts the future.
Because that'll come up again with like Scanners even.
Yeah.
Shit. Not that people have telepathic powers, but and then also I think he kind of alluded to like, not that he foresaw this or that he had any malice towards this concept, but this kind of also mimics public view on the AIDS crisis too.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's just on it. I think he just kind of knows just humanity pretty well, and he can see like trends really well. I think that's just kind of his thing.
So you've hinted all week at what you think of Rabid, but
Yes.
go ahead and tell the audience.
I don't
Fuck
know.
you.
I don't know. I thought it was okay. It was almost more B movie than Shivers was in the first place. I feel like it was almost like a step backwards in terms of like production value. The effects are cooler. And they're not like, it's not elaborate, but it is more technical in that sense. Because even in Shivers, just to go back a little bit, you can almost you can see the wiring, not literally, but like you can see like the puppet strings, like how they're pulling that off for the most part.
Right.
Whereas this, like there's a little bit more blended into like the magic of movie making.
What's funny, you say that about you're saying that about Shivers, right?
That you can see the strings.
What's funny about that is that's actually got some pretty revolutionary effects. When Nick he's got the parasite inside of him.
That
is
part's
like the
really
first
cool.
time they had done that.
That part's really
they
awesome.
were developing. Joe Blasco, I think, is the name of the effects guy. He was developing the bladder technique and just like filling balloons, and you would have like a pump system to just sort of raise certain parts to make it look like it's moving.
Yeah, I'm definitely not alluding to that part. I meant more like with the actual parasite itself.
Right, sure. And there's definitely like less effect. There's probably like. Yeah, there's just not a lot of effects in Shivers in general, honestly. I was gonna say Scanners, but no, there's just like two very big moments. We'll talk about Scanners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keeps coming up.
Yeah, we're just both excited, and it's cool. It's the last one because we're both just gonna nerd out about Scanners. But
yeah. So Rabid to me, I mean, it doesn't even like my notes. Like they're not even that extensive. Like it's whatever. I don't know. I didn't like it all that much.
All right, shit. Cronenberg has said that this is definitely a companion piece to Shivers, and he was writing very similar waves. Definitely like a sexually transmitted disease as the basis of both of these films. You start to see him play with gender politics a bit more, and you'll see him go on and do this in Videodrome as well. But, he has her, well, I guess just for context, the skin grafts, like a side effect is that she sort of grows this penis-looking appendage in her armpit that sucks blood. And it almost sort of morphs even through the movie. Like every time you see it, it looks a little bit different. It's like translucent at one point, and then you start to see that there's like sort of a metallic kind of point to it
like
at
a
the
needle.
end. Yeah, it's and she's almost like this really warped version of a vampire, and you'll definitely see more vampire what's the word I'm looking for?
Themes.
Yeah, sure. More vampire themes, with like the fact that she's sort of bisexual in her attacks.
Yeah.
She attacks women at least 2 times on screen. Her friend at the end, and then there's the woman in the jacuzzi.
Yeah.
And her attacks are incredibly very sexual. You know,
Yeah, because she has to like hug for
yeah,
one thing.
yeah, and even like the way she reacts, and like, you know, she's like, you know, they're thrashing,
writhes a
and
little
she's
bit.
like got her, you know, her like her fingernails like kind of dug into them, and she is always like stroking their hair afterwards. It is very like orgasmic,
Oh yeah, for
and
sure.
you know, this is
Even
sort
like
of
the sounds like she makes too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's sort of almost like a flip of like these predatory men, and there are definitely predatory men in this film. There's, you know, she almost gets raped by that like farmer kind of guy, and there's
Oh, when she's hitchhiking.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, this is almost like the flip. This is like the predatory female now, and he Cronenberg was actually I mean, on Shivers as well, but he was accused of misogyny, which he gets continually, you know, accused of. The first 3 of these films, at least, he's very, very much accused of being a misogynist. But if you just take a little bit of a further look back, you look at these women are created by men. All of them, they are created by men. There was a man who caused the accident in Rabid, and then a man who operates on her and does the, you know, and decides to do the experimental surgery.
Yeah.
Just like in Shivers, is a male
Shivers,
doctor who creates the sex
And very
female.
predatory, that guy.
Yeah.
Like, extremely so.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then
Yeah, I don't see the misogyny until I would say maybe, and I guess that sounds like me going on record saying like I do think has misogynistic leanings. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. Like The Brood would definitely make me lean more towards that though, that belief.
yeah, we could.
But I think it's just, you know, there's also context to that movie too that definitely needs to be addressed.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, I don't agree for Rabid or Shivers that there's anything inherently women hating here. So, I'm curious then, like, well, what did I miss? Like, what do you feel that like I'm not getting from this movie?
I don't even know if I would say you don't get it. I just am sort of disappointed that you don't like it as an extension of Shivers.
Again, though, I did see it in the wrong order.
You did, definitely. That might have something to do with it. Cronenberg, definitely, this is his more move towards the grotesque, and he doesn't have to play with such like it's not actual sexual acts that they're committing, so he's allowed to get more grotesque, and especially as the for lack of a better word, zombies start to pop up. There's a lot of pretty gruesome effects, and it does play with a lot of more Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead kind of zombie hordes.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty unhinged of a film, especially for early Cronenberg. Maybe possibly his most unhinged film of just like pure horror. This is his horror movie.
I gotta say, yeah. So now I'm thinking on it. I do have some pointers that I wanted to, or some points that I wanted to mention.
Sure,
there are 2 things that I really, really liked about Rabid, and one of them kind of crosses into Shivers. First thing, just solely Rabid that I really like is the ending. Just like her body being like thrown into like the trash.
I love the like hopelessness of that, because if you look at it, she is probably the antidote. She is, you know, like she has the disease, but she's not affected by the disease. She's not walking around like attacking people.
Truly mindless.
Right. She's patient zero, and she's walking around entirely anonymous. Nobody realizes it's her because the qualities of her disease are so much different.
Yeah, there's almost like a sense of choice with her actions. More so than
but she also feels incredibly innocent through the film. Like I definitely get that innocent quality from her.
I think
and she
like
tries to do
she
tries to do the right thing. She goes to the porno theater and attacks those guys. And that's an interesting play on like her being like, well, fuck you for watching my pornos. You know, just Marilyn Chambers, I mean, like, not
literally.
Rose.
Yeah.
But I love Rose in this. I love following her. She is a great protagonist. You want to say I guess she's the protagonist.
I guess.
But I really just enjoy her performance and the choices she makes, and
pretty deadpan performance though, I gotta say. At least like her vocal delivery. Not to get like too like analytical with it.
Well,
But
I mean, that's Cronenberg. It's cold. Everything in Cronenberg is really cold.
What I was gonna blame it on is that she's been doing pornos where like the scripts probably aren't the most important part.
Right, sure.
I don't know. It seemed a little lifeless, but but like the more physical aspects of like the way she attacks and like the way she walks and stuff. A lot of her eyes, like she does a really great job of like just looking at the people she's about to attack.
And there's some really clever.
Specific.
They do some clever things with Rose, like when she knocks on the door and she's like, I'm back amongst the living."
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some really fun stuff that she does, and I just really like that character. I guess that's what really drives Rabid in particular for me.
And the other aspect that I like about Rabid also ties in with Shivers.
It's the only character in any of these 4 movies that I like.
Oh, I disagree with you.
Yeah,
Hardcore. But the slow rise of the epidemic. I noticed that with Rabid. I was watching this and I'm like almost like, seeing on the art for the DVD, or for the Blu-ray rather, and having seen like even a trailer for it that I watched before the movie. It gets to like the tube or the subway station. You see like hordes of like zombies just walking around. And I'm like just kind of watching this movie, like waiting for like that to rise up, waiting for it to like really get into this huge mass of people. And Cronenberg does a great job of like building that tension very slowly, very methodically. Like it's not as if like the stakes are being raised, like scene by scene. Like it's just almost like narrative driven. Like it's happening behind the scenes. You don't really get to see it happen. And the same thing happens with Shivers. Like it turns out to be the entire building. I was even shocked at the end when the doctor like is being surrounded and you see that it's the whole entire building has now been infected. And you don't really get to see that happen. You see certain scenes here and there of certain people attacking each other, but you don't see it grow into like that big mass until like the very end.
right.
It's all happening behind the scenes. You know that it's happening, and
It's happening in little snippets.
yeah, and I appreciate that about these 2 movies.
I really like in Rabid how they hold off on the emotional weight of the changes until later on when you see like towards the end of the film when I don't remember Joe Silver's character in this. I don't remember his name. He's the doctor who goes home and his baby is dead.
Cypher. Murray Cypher.
Cypher, yeah. Who's also in Shivers. He's
Yep.
a carryover. And I think the like lobby manager in Shivers also carries over into a small part.
Oh, was he?
Mm-hmm.
I like that guy a lot in Shivers. I found him pretty funny.
Yeah, did you see I told you he looks like Hobo Johnson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I sent you that snap.
But he goes home and he sees that his that his kid has been killed, and then it's assumed that he's then killed by his wife who has been turned, and then Rose winds up killing her friend.
Yeah.
And Rose winds up eventually like there's that super emotional weight to Hart just being on the phone, listening to her getting attacked, and he starts breaking the phone. They hold that emotional weight off until the end. And I don't even feel like there's so much of an emotional weight in Shivers. At least for the characters, they're just kind of caught in the middle of it. Maybe when Forsyth is turned and but and that's a really interesting. There's a interesting dynamic there at the end in the pool. When he sees her and that's kind of like at least I would read that as like that's part of the reason why he kind of gives up and just gives in is because now this woman that he loves, his partner, has turned too. So it's like okay, all right, me too.
Yeah, I guess
he gives himself up.
Yeah.
But you don't see that in Rabid. Everybody's kind of fighting till the end, except for Rose, who I guess is trying to prove a point, and then winds up taking all hope of humanity with her. You know what I mean? They could have found an antidote or a vaccine or something. They claim they have a vaccine.
They both do have like really huge implications that like this turns out to be much
yeah,
bigger.
These are his big apocalyptic movies. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I like that. Like for a pretty like Shivers is pretty self-contained until it's not. Rabid is like
also kind
of on a larger scale a little bit, I guess, because it
goes from that rural into the city.
Right.
You see, it's almost like how Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 plays. If you think about it, where Evil Dead is just in the cabin.
Just the cabin.
And then Evil Dead 2 like adds more people and then there's that whole bridge scene and everything. It adds more. It gets crazier, it gets bigger, but it's sort of just like an extension of one and the other.
Yeah.
They really go together hand in hand. They're great.
Yeah, I think I would have enjoyed Rabid a little bit more had I seen it after Shivers. I still think though I'm gonna stand my ground and say that like my sentiment of it being not that like in any case a superior film.
Mhm.
I hold true to that. I think that there's no real obvious growth from Shivers to this his second feature, except for the effects.
Mhm.
Yeah,
All right.
I think the Brood is when we start to see a little bit more about who Cronenberg ends up becoming.
Sure. Oh yeah, yeah. I was just gonna try to segue into that and say that like, let's. You want to move into the Brood?
I guess that's my cue.
All right. Well, this is before we even read the IMDb. This is the beginning of what I would call Cronenberg proper. This is where he hooks up with, film scorer Howard Shore,
Howard Shore.
who goes on to do the score in a lot of his movies, and then goes on to do like Scorsese films and do all the Lord of the Rings movies, which are fantastically scored. Howard Shore is really great, and he's even great in The Brood and Scanners as well. And then also Mark Irwin, who gives that signature Cronenberg look.
All right, I'm Mark Irwin. That was
That's you're trying to do
Yeah,
Steve
Steve
Irwin?
Irwin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Mark Irwin, you will see definitely as you watch. You've seen The Brood and Scanners. You watch Videodrome.
I have,
Fly.
yeah.
You will see like that is the Cronenberg look to those films.
One thing before we move on, just tell me right now, what have I seen of the next episode besides Videodrome? I don't think anything
Nothing.
because there's Dead Ringers. Well, we'll get to that, but I don't think
Dead Ringers, Dead Zone, Fly, Videodrome. Not in that
now
order.
they all know. Now all the listeners
They know we talked about it in the last episode.
Nah, yeah. Okay, I already seen one, and that's Videodrome is after this.
Yeah,
after
that's
Scanners.
gonna be the first
So
one on the next
I'm
episode.
doing it in order then. That was my concern.
Now you're yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right, let's get into that IMDb review.
IMDb. Look at that. I get to do this four times.
Maybe by the end of this episode they will have sponsored us. Maybe on the fourth movie we'll be like, hey, we're sponsored by IMDb.
Sponsored by IMDb.
That's why people are sticking around because they want to know whether or not we're going to get the sponsorship.
This is the story. This is the drama of good suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. The Brood, 1979. A man tries to uncover an unconventional psychologist therapy techniques on his institutionalized wife amidst a series of brutal murders.
Repeat the first sentence of that again.
A man tries to uncover an unconventional psychologist therapy techniques on his
Wait, let me see it.
institutionalized wife.
Psychologists. Okay.
Psychologists.
It was throwing me off. Okay.
A man tries to uncover an unconventional psychologist's therapy techniques on his institutionalized wife. Okay. Oh, it refreshed. IMDb crashed. Amidst a series of brutal murders.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all right. They've been to the point so far.
There's a few.
Yeah,
Aren't too many murders.
there's enough to keep it going.
Yeah, I don't think there's.
Well, this is Cronenberg's, most personal film. Certainly,
We
both know that this is really intense. A lot of people look at The Fly as like, wow, this is like Cronenberg's real, like, wow, this is his emotional weight film. But I would say The Brood really has some heavy stuff
like
going
if
on
you
in
know the context,
Right.
It's immediately heavy.
Not only for like Cronenberg's own divorce, but like definitely like the themes that are being played.
Right, that's what I was gonna say. Like if you know the context for like Cronenberg's, like what he was going through at the time, it's like immediately like heavy. Like wow, like he must have had some kind of cathartic thing as he was writing this. Outside of that, though, just watching this movie, it's like the themes are universal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely very emotional.
Yeah. Well, Cronenberg, his wife, prior to this, they had a kid together. I'm not entirely sure if that winds up being I forgot his son's name, but he is also a director. He made a movie called Antiviral. I'm not sure if that's his kid, but she wound up linking up with some sort of cult, like religious cult in California, and was trying to like take their kid away. And he like wound up going to California to the cult and like rescuing his kid and bringing him back to California, or bringing him back to Canada rather, from California. And that was just a very intense personal moment in his life, and like it's probably the only really, really personal event that's influenced any of his films. So there's definitely a big piece of Cronenberg's life in this film. And this is also just like conveniently a very, very mature version of Cronenberg. Um, I'm gonna just keep repeating mature and maturity through this segment of the episode because it's definitely how I feel. Is this is really where Cronenberg comes into his own as a filmmaker and you begin to see signs of who we know as Cronenberg and who
Yeah.
you'll see through like the next episode, which is like, Cronenberg at his biggest.
Yeah, I mean, for one thing, like again, there's a lot of some like sexual undertones in this movie, but
Sure,
here it's
of course.
more psychosexual rather than anything about like the flesh and this whole desire.
Sure,
It's more of like your psychology behind it.
Yeah.
And my note here was that like it makes total sense that he ended up making a dangerous method because like this is where like a lot of Freudian stuff like really plays in. Even with like the opening freaking scene where like that whole therapy session that's happening in like in a theater.
Oh, you should have been a girl. That whole
Yeah, like
with
the therapist is like
psychoplasmics session,
he's playing like this guy's his patient's father. And he calls him like dad and he calls him son, whatever, and that continues on throughout the movie.
Yeah. Oliver Reed doing a really great job in that role. Playing Hal Raglan.
Also, I want to say that the
More
main
and
character,
more mad doctors.
Yeah.
More mad doctors not realizing what they've caused.
and yeah, he certainly does in the end.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say also that the dad character, the main character, Carveth,
Yeah. Frank
Yeah.
Carveth.
I just liked how he looks like a mix of George Michael and Peter Dinklage.
He looks a little Cronenberg too.
That's
He
a note
he's
for me.
definitely got a Cronenberg.
I think
face.
he looks the least Cronenberg.
I would say Nola looks more like Cronenberg.
From isn't it from Shivers?
No, Nola, the wife in this.
Oh, Nola. Who am I thinking? Oh, Rollo. I'm thinking of Rollo.
And that's Joe Silver.
Huh?
That's Joe Silver, right? That's
Yeah.
hey.
Pretty sure.
Yeah. He just kind of like through the whole film, he just kind of has this like blank expression like of shock on his face. It's more of that Canadian ineffectual hero. He's just kind of
Very ineffectual in this one.
Yeah.
I feel like he's just trying to figure out what the heck's going on.
yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
Dr. Raglan, again played by Oliver Reed, probably the biggest name in a Cronenberg film at this point so far. He has developed what's called psychoplasmics, which is manifesting physical representations of feelings. And then as you work through those feelings, they go away, I guess is like the hope. And you see that definitely that shocking scene where he rips open his shirt. The character's name is Mike.
Yeah.
He rips open his shirt and he's got all the lesions all over his skin. There's kind of twisty knots. And that's sort of just like you drag out the feelings so much that they will physically manifest, which is definitely like rooted in a sort of realistic thing because like even like eczema
Kinda like a
and different
psychosomatic
things
thing.
can definitely like your emotions and stress can definitely cause some physical ailments. And even like when you look at like depression causes like lethargic kind of feelings and
There's a huge connection.
There's definitely a huge connection, and this
mind
is
and
where
body.
he will start playing really heavily with the mind and body trope that he will continue on with in Scanners. And it's got a really simple and abrupt opening with it's just like turn the movie on and boom, the music hits. It says the name and all the credits, and it's really like an actualized film. I don't feel like Cronenberg is leaning on any kind of previous made work to make this feature. He's not trying to do anything other than pure Cronenberg, and I think that's part of him finding like Mark Irwin and Howard Shore and finding people who are like there to make his vision.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. What was it? I think it was just Cronenberg speaking that the philosophy behind even making like Shivers was just that the producers or the people funding it were surrounding him with people that have done this before, like have industry experience because he had never helmed a movie like that before.
And like
and he continues to do that. I think that carries on. Like that's something that he learned himself. He's like, I want to surround myself with people who I can learn from and who can only elevate my vision.
That's funny because that's actually like this is Howard Shore's first like score ever to do like for a film.
Oh yeah.
And Mark Irwin, this is their second project together, actually, because I think Mark Irwin was the DP on Fast Company, which we're not doing for this because it's a racing movie, but
Yeah.
still that came out the same year as this actually. They're both 79 films. But going back to that opening scene, there is that line that weakness is more acceptable in women. He says that, I should have made you a
Oh, yeah,
daughter,
yeah, yeah.
because you're so weak. And which is, I mean, I just kind of read the character of Mike as like struggling with either, sexuality or gender in some way, and is definitely, bogged down by that, even in the way he speaks and his mannerisms.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, with a father, we just have to assume how his father was.
That being it. But also, I feel like, and I'll especially see this later on in the film, especially with the teacher character and the way he kind of provokes those angry feelings out of Nola, is that like he is almost like he is like purposefully provoking and being and like
Oh,
bringing
yeah.
out their worst
Oh, yeah.
thoughts and their worst kind of assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
But he says weakness is more acceptable in women, which is sort of almost the thesis of this film, as far as Nola is, looked at. And
As in, like, she is the antithesis of that,
sure, yeah,
because like if she was weaker,
yeah. This is all about a woman who,
Then
if
all
you're
this
looking at
wouldn't
this
have
on face
happened.
value, is too powerful,
yeah, right.
physically manifesting her anger and her rage.
Like, because she's not playing the meek, woman, shit goes to shit.
right.
Yeah. Okay.
In the great words of Bruce Dickinson, singer of Iron Maiden, this works on two different levels.
He doesn't sound like that.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. But Raglan, super interesting character. He acts as sort of a cult leader. They're definitely like everybody at that clinic feels indebted to him. Even his like
Yeah.
sort of like assistant guy, like they're all like very like kind of at his beck and call. But he also acts as like a stepfather sort of character in the way that he treats Nola, in the way that he treats Frank, in the way that he sort of regards Candy.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet, I think what was it, like the courts, because the whole, I think the IMDb was kind of straightforward and in that like left some stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
There's a kind of like a custody battle going on with between the parents,
Right.
and
Because they're getting divorced.
right,
Yeah.
and
This
Frank.
movie is framed around a divorce. I don't even think we've said that yet.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like the IMDb didn't really do all that swell of a job, but Frank is trying to show that like, look, he should be with Candy. He should have her in custody because she's like in this weird culty therapist thing, and yet it is recognized as like a legitimate psychotherapy thing.
Right.
So there's nothing that they can like do against that.
Right. And even when
It's unfortunate, honestly.
even when Candy comes home with the scratches and the bruises, Raglan says like, "Oh no, the courts they like motherhood."
Mm-hmm. Which is
so
still
there's-
true.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Still true.
Yeah.
One thing also that we have not addressed is that this is something of a creature film.
Sure.
And I certainly did not expect that at all. I mean, the first official like death or murder happens from like this little gremlin child,
Right.
and that ends up being like a huge part of what's happening between Nola and her therapy. That was something I wasn't expecting to see. Literal little creatures happening in a Cronenberg movie. I figured it was all going to be pretty mental or physical, like on one person, not these little creatures that are spawned. They're not born or anything. They're just like spawned from her anger.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, for me to express my feelings on the creatures, I would have to kind of say this first. This film is not only about divorce; it's about children of divorce. It's about the effects of divorce on a child, on the parents, and how there are just cycles of abuse that happen within families, and that it's very hard to break those because when you look at
the ending.
Look at Nola's parents. Nola's
Oh,
divorced
true, yeah.
parents, they and she has that moment where she's talking to Raglan and Raglan's pretending to be her father and she's saying, when she hit me, you should have hit her back. You should have protected me. So there's clearly this abuse, and then you see that abuse then put onto Candy.
And Candy it ends up getting like the physical warts on her body.
Right.
At the end.
And Nola did not grow into a Nola didn't grow into a functioning person because she never had like that functioning household to like show her what it is to be a person, and she was abused, and then there's that cycle, and I don't know if this was something that was said in the film or it's just in the essay that comes with the Blu-ray. It's kind of hazy, but there was. I'm gonna assume it's in the essay, but it's sort of this idea that like she was somebody crazy, or she was the reason why she was with Frank is because she was like looking to find out how to be sane.
The reason why Nola was with Frank.
Yeah, is sort of like it was like almost Eternal Sunshiny, which is like I'm fucked up and you're not, and I'm gonna, attach myself to you for some hope of, normalcy. But it's not gonna work out because we can't really escape our nature.
Mm.
But all this coming back to the little gremlins, they look like Candy. They're dressed like Candy, especially, and they're the same height. And I sort of they're like attack dog versions of Candy. And it's funny because children are often used as weapons in divorce. They're used as bartering tools. They're used as ways to emotionally compromise the other parent.
Wow, what?
And yeah,
that's a heck of an insight there.
yeah. I told you I was coming. Coming at you for the Brood, baby. I told you I was coming at you for the Brood.
Is this a therapy session? You're bringing things up.
and children are often used as weapons, and this is very, very much a physical version of that. And when you look at them, they're this warped looking, this warped looking version of Candy. And I haven't decided whether or not that might be how just Nola is looking at Candy, and that's just sort of her interpretation, or maybe it's a premonition for how Candy will become, predatory and angry and full of rage and like her mother. Or maybe it's just how Candy is feeling inside at that moment because she's seeing her parents torn apart and she's like, what, 6, 7? She doesn't understand. And it could be all of those things.
And the only other like mother figure that she really had being the teacher.
Yeah.
Ends up getting murdered by these little creatures.
Right in front of her.
And all these other little children.
And then they just bring her back. And there's that great shot of her being flanked by the 2 gremlins walking down that like
down the street
road.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like she is caught between these 2 forces. And, Candy has never really developed as a character. You know what I mean? You don't really get Candy's perspective or point of view. She's just kind of lost in this battle between these 2 adults, these 2 very headstrong adults.
Yeah.
And that is very much like a child of divorce. They are silent. They are kind of unseen until they need to be used. And Candy in this film, like a child of divorce, is used.
You're blowing my mind right now.
This is a fucking good movie, right?
You're blowing it. It's a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of like in Scanners. Look at that. I turned it back in.
Hey-yo.
Oh my God. No, that's incredible. Yeah.
There's so many themes of parenthood in this. Even when, Frank goes to talk to Mike and he says, my real daddy rejected me. My surrogate daddy rejected me. Are you going to reject me too?
Mm.
There is so much just this constant beating of just like broken families and broken children from broken families. Nola being a broken child, then creating a broken family and a broken child.
You got to hate that cycle, man.
Yeah, absolutely. This movie is all about that cycle,
Yeah.
and that's why I can't read it as misogynist, because it is so based in reality.
Mm. Like, so by that sentiment, you're saying that like Nola is only just a product of like what she went through of her childhood. And that's why it's not just looking at her like, oh, women are like this. It's like this character.
It's the character.
Yeah.
It's not a representation of women.
Right.
Yeah.
Still though, I don't know. It's a pretty harsh look.
It's intense.
Even if it's just about this one character, like it's an intense look at what this one character is like capable of.
I know both mothers and fathers who have been like Nola. You know what I mean? And I know plenty of those kids, and I can definitely see that damage. And when you see that final shot of that final shot in the film,
yeah,
where she's got those lesions and she's not coming out unscarred, she is going to continue that cycle. It is a dark ending.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something cool because, like, what you said is, it's sticking in my mind is that Candy doesn't develop. Like, there's not much of a character to her. She's just kind of stuck in this situation.
Yeah.
And yet, when the way that the movie ends is that you're forced to recognize that, sure, she hasn't developed yet because she's a child, but now that after the movie ends, there's so much that she's going to go through for the rest of her life.
She's got her whole life.
Yeah.
And, there's that great scene of Nola's father. I think his name is Brandon or Bray, something with a B. He says something along the lines of like, "I never meant for it to be this way. I never meant for."
He's pretty
things to
ineffectual
happen."
too. Now that I
Yeah.
think about
Oh
it.
yeah. Sure.
Shit.
Sure.
This. Do I have that in here? I saw this pretty great. No, I saw this cool analysis on YouTube. That since shoot, I'm blanking on his name. Even Raglan. Since Raglan has been interviewing or trying to help out Nola, he knows a lot about like her parents,
Yeah.
and he knows a lot about Nola's father.
Right.
So when Nola's father goes up to Raglan and like accuses him and threatens him, like, if you don't release my daughter so she can go to the funeral, like I'm coming back. Raglan's like, dude, I know you're pretty much spineless. I know you're not gonna do it.
Yeah.
He doesn't say it, but he's like, okay, go ahead, do it. And then he knows, like,
And
after
he just
all these
leaves.
sessions,
He just
he's
leaves.
like, fuck it, like I know this guy.
And
He's
he
not-
even like he like even his like assistant comes out, right, and is like, "Oh, what was that about?" And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. He's just drunk."
Mm,
Yeah. It's incredible this role that like Raglan plays, where I'm so unsympathetic to Raglan, but he's just like he
Yeah, I
takes
know.
this role of where he is like a parent to Nola, he is like a stepfather,
but he
is
oversteps
like
his boundaries.
oh,
man.
absolutely. But like when you look at that, when you look at people who have been through that cycle, like Nola clearly has, they look for that surrogate kind of father.
Absolutely.
Just and you look at like just like Mike said, my surrogate father rejected me.
Mhm.
That line is like, yeah, absolutely. They sometimes for people like that, lovers will take and in relationships they will take that place of like the parent that they need.
Yeah. Shit, I know I did.
Yeah.
Like,
And then
father figure stuff. Like, you try to latch onto anything that can kind of give you that guidance.
Right.
I wonder what that would end up being like for Candy later on.
Right.
Truly, I wonder like if there's going to be any kind of remarriage later on in life or something. If they're going to move away somewhere. I don't know. I really care for Candy a lot because like like we mentioned, like she has absolutely no part. Like any child in any divorce, like they have no say, they have no part in this. It's not their fault, and yet their whole world is being flipped over.
Yeah, I'm sure we've said it. We've both said it at some point on this podcast that we are both like kids of divorce, and so like
I
there
don't know if we
definitely is a
have.
part of me that like resonates with Candy
Yeah.
in seeing that and that helpless feeling. Certainly, yeah, and if the world kind of looks at that, you talk, oh, she has daddy issues. That's why she acts that way. That's why, that's what people say. And I would say that it's less Cronenberg being misogynistic and more of him having a much more 3D view than the world does on people in those situations and women in those situations. Nola at no point feels Cronenberg does not make a point to make Nola look like she's all that evil. Like she is still kind of being influenced by outer things. He's very clear about like her abuse as a child, and very clear that Raglan is doing things.
And for what it's worth, it seems like she's trying to get better.
Yeah, mostly it's through the eyes of Frank that we get her as this evil thing.
Well, even then, like I think like one of the main like critical parts of like I guess the climax is that Frank has to like distract her by saying like I'll take you back, I love you, all this like really nice talking to her.
And I'm so for Nola in that scene, though. I am so on her side of her just being like, I'm something much bigger than you and greater than you've ever become, even than
like when she calls him like a liar.
Yeah, is like that all the sweet talking he tries to do, all that lies, and I'm sure that he has lied to her in the past before. You know what I mean? You got to assume like that he has probably kind of seen that she's been a little bit unhinged, a little bit mentally ill for a while, and it's just nice to see her just being like, fuck you, your tricks won't work on me. I've grown into something different, and I don't think psychoplasmics in the regards of this movie, and obviously it's just a made up thing for this movie, but I wouldn't say that wow, look at this great procedure that Raglan has done, but it has certainly transformed her and given her at least more confidence. And even from the beginning of the movie, where she is just so broken, and every time you see her, she's doing those, those sessions, and she's just on the verge of this very emotional, thing. She is at this point. She's like, no, fuck you.
Yeah.
Look at what I've created. Look what I've become. And you want to see me? You want me? You want to be back with me? Well, look at this. And then there's the outer
weird
womb.
sack thing.
Yeah. Again, the physical manifestation.
Yeah, which is to say that I don't think we touched on that. Like there are, aside from like the lesions, There's also that guy that Frank meets, who's also trying to file a lawsuit, I think, against Raglan.
Yes.
And he has like that growth on his neck.
He's later in Scanners. He's the artist.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the dude.
Oh cool.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean they have like pretty minor, relatively speaking, physical representations of what they're going through, but Nola like literally just is possibly the suffering the worst. And then I think that's why Raglan centers everything around her. That's why he kicks everybody off.
Mike calls her the Queen Bee.
Exactly.
It says, Raglan is using her to prove that this works.
Right.
Raglan is definitely influencing her for his own means, and
I mean, this whole movie, the whole creature aspect of it is like literally his fault. It's just Raglan's doing.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have anything else you want to add to this? Any last thoughts?
One last thought. Since this movie wasn't so heavily focused on like the body horror kind of stuff, I thought to myself, I was getting pretty desensitized to all of it until Nola like has like the
reveal,
and
then
she like
starts
bites into like, and then she also licks the newborn.
Yeah,
the licking of the newborn really took me out of it.
The afterbirth.
Yeah, it was gross.
She actually feels that was a character choice. She made that decision. She felt that was a character choice because she felt that Nola was probably like a farm girl.
Okay. I respect your choice.
It's freaky.
That's
it's
a
great.
great actor's choice. It fucked me up. That's bold. Actors, man, they're weird. You know what? I think my character would do this.
Would eat the afterbirth of my strange baby.
That was like Tommy What's Up for a second. It's a
funny.
real Hollywood movie.
I was actually gonna make that joke about The Brood when we first started. I was like, this is sort of his Tommy Wiseau real Hollywood movie. Yeah.
I saw that. The Disaster Artist.
Did you see it? It's a good movie.
Yeah.
It's a good real Hollywood movie. Actually.
It's a real Hollywood movie.
Yeah. So let's go on to it, baby.
Oh, the time has come.
Oh, yes. In 1981, David Cronenberg says, these really thoughtful, interesting, incredible films that I've made so far. What if I did that with the X-Men?
What if David Cronenberg wanted to make a comic book superhero movie?
A lot of people, that would be, how there's that famous story about, David Lynch was approached to make Return of the Jedi?
Yes.
David Cronenberg was also asked to make Return of the Jedi.
Imagine that. Probably would have been better.
It would have been really, I love that movie. It's my second favorite of the three. But imagine like Darth Vader pulling off his mask and it's all like,
yeah.
That would have changed the way they
Return of the Jedi. Like, I know New Hope is your favorite.
Yeah, that's only a recent development though. That used to be my favorite Star Wars movie of all time. Was Return of the Jedi. I love Return of the Jedi.
Oh man, even with the Ewoks. And I know that's the go-to.
Oh, I hate the Ewoks.
I know that, but like still,
I get it. And I hate Jar Jar Binks. You deal with C-3PO every fucking movie. I hate C-3PO.
He's really, but he's funny too.
Fuck him.
He's cute. He's funny.
Fuck him. Remember when they deconstructed him and Jesus, I was about to say Chewbacca wears him on his back.
You carried him around? Yeah.
That's the best he is.
It's funny.
Just deconstructed.
He's funny.
Fuck him. Or when his head is on the battle droid in episode
That's also funny. Ewoks not the worst part of Return of the Jedi. But this is not a Star Wars podcast.
I wish.
That's the next show that we do.
Good Star Warsing.
I really don't like Return of the Jedi all that much. I think there's like cool parts. And necessary parts for the series, but
there's too many Star Wars podcasts out there anyway.
Why are we talking about Star Wars? We're moving on now.
Scanners, baby.
Scanners.
I was trying to make an X-Men joke, and it just became a whole ass thing.
X-Men, the best Marvel's ever done. Not the movies, just the best comics. Aside from Spider-Man.
But this is basically an X-Men movie.
This is basically an X-Men movie. It's really cool.
Cronenberg's action movie.
It's literally like that. I know it's not a unique thought, but like I was watching this, I was like, this is a superhero movie.
Yeah, it's an action film with a lot of espionage elements, bookended by two incredible scenes of body horror.
Yeah,
starts and finishes with that.
This is like that gritty like comic book movie that people want and expect like Zack Snyder to like do, but this is like really hard.
And there's no slow motion.
There's no slow mo.
It's great. Read the IMDb.
IMDb. Hey, look, would you look at that? We're still not sponsored.
Mm-hmm.
A scientist sends a man with extraordinary psychic powers to hunt others like him.
That is the worst one.
That's pretty crude.
That is not even the movie.
That's pretty. Wait a minute. To hunt
others
like
he's
him.
hunting one.
Yeah, that's really, really not true. And if we're talking, if we're not referring to the actual like main, what's the name? Steven? No.
Vale is his last name.
Okay, so Vale being like the protagonist we're talking about. Mm-hmm. He certainly is not going for others. I don't know. Oh, that's weird. Like Revik is going for others, but he's not sent. He's kind of just doing that himself. Anyway,
well, he's sent. He is sent.
He's the one he's like the leader.
Who, Revik?
Revik.
Oh yeah, but Vale is sent.
Vale is sent, but he's not sent to hunt others. Vevik is just hunting others.
Yeah, Revik. Yeah, well, Revik is trying to recruit others.
Right. So overall, bad synopsis.
Yeah.
So what is this movie really about then, Doug? Give a better synopsis. Give me like a one sentence.
Oh, don't put me on the spot here.
We need to let the people know what the movie's about.
It's the X-Men, but better.
Okay, so there's these people.
There was distinctly like 5 times during the movie where I'm like, wow, there's the X-Men in it.
There's these people called scanners.
And then just before we started this,
oh my god,
I read the last thing I did for this was read the essay that comes with scanners, and they mentioned like the X-Men and like everything that popped in my head, and I was like, okay, yeah, cool, I'm not off the mark with that.
Oh no,
it's an action movie. That's what it is. It's a superhero movie.
It's a superhero movie.
Yeah.
Scanners. These people have telepathy. Oh my god, I'm trying to give a synopsis.
It is the only Cronenberg movie to spark a franchise because there are 4 other Scanners movies.
And was there not a TV show too, or am I wrong?
No.
Am I wrong?
They tried. Didn't happen.
It was a pilot though, I guess.
No.
Was there not? I thought there was.
That I know of.
What was Scanner Cop then?
Scanner Cop's a movie.
It was a movie?
Scanner Cop is Scanners 4.
That's 4.
Then there's Scanner Cop 2, which is Scanners 5.
I thought it was a
Scanner
pilot.
Cop. Can you believe that this movie gets turned into just a few down the line? Scanner Cop.
It's not a terrible idea though.
Not really.
Maybe not Scanner Cop.
I haven't seen any of the
Scanner
sequels. I know Rob Galuzzo, who's on the Shockwaves podcast, really likes the sequels.
I want to watch them.
Yeah.
They're online.
Scream Factory did a double feature Blu-ray for 2 and 3. But I know they are like absolutely not. Like there's no implications to them. It's straight up just like psychic.
I still want to see it though.
Sure, of course. I mean, of course.
I like this world. I like this world.
Of course.
So scanners, these people have telepathic powers. There's one guy, Revik, who was kind of I wouldn't say pupil, but he was like a patient. He was kind of like a study thing. And he kind of got out of hand. He realized his powers were very strong, and they kind of went to his head. Literally, he like he tries to drill like a hole in his head to like relieve some of the pressure.
That like footage from like the interrogation room or whatever.
Yeah, the black and white stuff.
It's great.
Yeah, it's really good.
The thing on his like the eye.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then this other guy, Vale, he's
find out his first name just for the hell of it.
Why?
Just so we know.
Hold on. Okay, so there's Cameron Vale.
Cameron Vale.
But beneath it says as Steven something. I thought it was Steven. Am I wrong? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it's saying here either. Vale. I'm gonna keep calling him Vale. I don't care. He kind of gets recruited, tries to get trained, so that he can actually take out Revik and the other people that Revik is.
Well, the company that's studying these scanners, that's what they're called.
Mm-hmm.
They are trying to find them. They at some point say that they have 236 known scanners, and they are trying to do a study, to just sort of figure out what it is. It's later revealed that there is a drug called ephemeral, which will like help like mute the telekinetic powers that they can control. But they can't, like, the voices that they hear, it's sort of like they can't stop that.
Yeah.
And it's like when you hear what it sounds like in their head, it's awful. It's grotesque.
I just wanted to clarify. Steven is the name of the actor that plays Cameron Vale.
Yeah.
That's why I got confused.
Yeah, Stephen
Lack.
Lack. Yeah, he's an artist too. He's an artist now. Like he gave up acting.
Oh.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of just like twisty turny, a lot of spy elements to this movie. A lot of like I wouldn't say plot twists. There are a few, but there's a lot of like double crossings and who's really working for who and what's actually everybody's motivation.
And like,
It's almost like very noir.
Is Vale gonna be able to actually like hone his powers? Because there's that scene where he is like doing the test, with the other doctor across from him,
the old man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he keeps having to tell him like, okay, like stop scanning. He's about to like kill this guy, and you wonder like if Vale's gonna end up becoming just like Revik. He's just gonna become this power hungry.
And there's definitely is a very predatory air to him too, especially when he attacks the like the gallery owner.
Who's this?
Vale.
Oh, like when he first comes to the
the art gallery and he's looking for
the artist. Yeah,
which is that art is so cool.
It really is.
The giant head
awesome.
and like and then like they eventually blow a hole in it. Like it was a lot of like very like visual metaphor going on in there.
I specifically like the ones with like all the faces like deformed and they have like these strings or tubes like hanging down.
Yeah. Or like the fucked up doctors that almost look like the pig nosed doctors from the Twilight Zone. Yeah. But what's interesting is like the Brood has a lot of very blurred lines. You know what I mean? Nobody's really good. Nobody's really evil. It's just sort of like people caught and, acting with how they know. But it gives way to Scanners, which still plays with that mind and body element, but it's very much good versus evil. It's very much like there's like right and wrong lines, and those are redrawn, but it's never not black and white.
What I was looking at with these scanners was that I was almost looking at it in like a weird like Nietzschean like lens, where he has like that concept of like the Ubermensch or like the Overman or Superman as it's called.
Sure.
And I saw these scanners as like that, like the embodiment of being now over man, like being the next evolutionary step for humanity.
Right. Which is another X-Men kind of thing.
Yeah. And then further with that, I don't know Nietzsche all that well, to be honest, but I think he might be the one that has like a very famous quote about like but the point is like if you try enough to like tame like a beast, like you might become it, or like if you stare enough into the void, like you become it, or it's, you know what I mean? Like if you start battling like this evil thing, you might end up becoming like that monster.
Right.
And I think that's something that's very, very much played in this movie, especially with like
in the end, yeah.
I think it's a lot about like what humanity's like next steps could be, how we can become better than what we are now, and yet how that can lead to maybe like a de-evolution, like maybe someone becoming like a total tyrant dictator like Revik wants to be.
Right. What's interesting is like Cronenberg, this is so as far as Cronenberg genre, films go, this is a lot different than any of them. Even what you'll, continue to see. Yeah, this is really a lot different in like where the inspiration comes from. I feel like he was almost so spent with the Brood, he wanted to just sort of indulge in like the things that he really likes, which are just big set pieces, and it's a fun movie. At the end of the day, like this is probably his most fun.
It's the most entertaining.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. And like there's guys getting set on fire and bus chases and big
Head
explosions. And
God,
even like
so
the telephone booth and like the supercomputer exploding. Like yeah, there's just a lot of like big, fun, action-y sequences in there, and I think that's sort of Cronenberg indulging himself after like spending himself in the Brood, but it still has like this very sophisticated and elegant air to it that Cronenberg films have.
Yeah,
and it
still like a disconnect.
With, like, misguided doctors, and like the products of what they've done. One of the big reveals is that Dr. Ruth is his name, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
He is actually both Vale and Revik's father, and he was the developer of that drug, and he gave it to his wife when she was pregnant, and that's how they got the skinning abilities. And that drug that that if the drug is given to pregnant women, it creates the scanners. The babies will develop the telepathy.
Hmm.
But it also will in the scanners themselves, it will calm down their brains, and Revik is using the company that's hunting him to actually use the computer to distribute ephemeral to pregnant women
Yeah.
to make more scanners.
Yeah.
He's kind of trying to build
It's
an
pretty
army.
cool concept. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost kind of Nazi-ish, you know what I mean? In the way of just we're gonna build an army of the best men, you know.
And Nietzsche was accused of, well, not even accused, Nazis actually took his philosophies and applied it to their fascist views.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely coming from the same world.
His sister too. And I think about it, sisters. Nietzsche's sisters were literally Nazis. Ugh. What was I gonna say too? Oh my God, you said something there that sparked something in my mind, and I can't get back to it. So I'll get back to this other little note I have here. People don't blink in Cronenberg's movies, man. They all have these weird piercing eyes.
Stares.
That just stare.
Especially Vale, man.
Yeah.
Vale is that is really what freaks me out about him, is he's just always very just intense.
Yeah, and with the cinematography of this movie being so much better than the previous movies. I mean, The Brood's pretty good.
And Mark Irwin, yeah. And
Yeah,
it's
pretty
that
great.
Videodrome, you see it in The Fly.
But there's this awesome use of color throughout the movie. Stark kind of lighting, some fluorescent stuff, even in the opening, but also weird stagey theatery kind of lighting throughout here and there.
Yeah.
That it made me notice that it requires a strange and very dedicated and very elevated performance from all the actors.
Right.
And that's something that I also recognize in even the earlier stuff, that these actors have to commit to these the very physical performances of thriving, just writhing around on the floor, or throwing up and throwing up blood, or just lunging at people for their necks and trying to eat them. It's just it's all very, very physical performances. And then in this movie, it's not so much about this ravenous zombie kind of lunging.
Yeah. More of this mental, physical pain.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think Cronenberg's really not.
Michael Ironside really rises to the task on that.
Yeah.
He really, Revik, especially at the end, you know, it's great when there's
that last
reveal with
that duel thing.
Yeah, that's fucking great.
But yeah, just to finish off that thought, it's just something that I noticed is that Cronenberg, while he writes awesome stories, cool scripts, and has all this awesome effects, he still manages to get pretty cool and interesting performances from his actors. I wonder how what does he prioritize when he's directing, on the set,
Right.
I feel he has his hands on everything, and he does a pretty great job of that.
Yeah. Do you think there might be some sort of connection between The Brood and Scanners in the fact that there is a stage and an audience in both of those, and having seen Videodrome, I don't want to get too deep into Videodrome, but do you feel then it goes on to a much wider audience. You go to the television. Do you feel there's some sort of logical progression there, that he is trying to do something?
I was thinking that not so much. Well, a little bit with Videodrome.
That's definitely a thing in Videodrome, is the idea of the audience and implicating the audience.
Right. But I had this idea, this theory that Cronenberg's very much aware that everyone almost kind of just puts on a performance, no matter what, on a day-to-day kind of life, and that perhaps sometimes being on a literal stage almost forces you to confront that and forces you to be a little bit more real than real. Something that I think comes up in Videodrome a little bit. Maybe that's just me projecting a little bit, but does that make sense at all to you? That on a day-to-day level, everyone kind of has their performances. They all behave a certain way, and then when they're forced to actually behave on a stage in front of an audience, it almost forces them to be more aware of who they are as a person. Does that make sense? Am I just like rambling in a circle here?
No.
Like specifically like in The Brood, right? For instance, like that is a therapy session. Imagine going to a therapist and then having to go through that whole session on a stage.
Right.
You're gonna be like very aware of like the fact that you have all these eyes on you, and that what you're saying is very, very, very personal.
Right. It's like a removal of intimacy. And maybe it's less of like a philosophical thing for Cronenberg and more of just like an idea he's playing with, and like the beginnings of what Videodrome would become, of the philosophy of Videodrome. You know what I mean? Where he's just like, well, we're going to take these private things, we're going to take these intense things, be it a therapy session in the Brood, or this like obviously like there's a lot of eyes on when the doctor's head explodes, but also that whole session, you know what I mean, it's a display. You know what I mean, he's working with the idea of like putting these things on display.
This movie, like it's a strange way, and like it's how it's entertaining, and like you can just enjoy it for face value. But again, like we mentioned before, like there's almost like this weird ability of Cronenberg's to like see where like humanity is going. For instance, like the way Vale uses like the telephone is trying to like hack into like the computer through that. I think this might be a stretch, but I also heard it like on some video essay about how like it also relates to how we use like satellites today and how everything's connected online via the internet, things like that. Like even if like you said, like if Cronenberg is just kind of spent from The Brood, right, and he makes this movie to kind of just, I don't know, be a little bit more freewheeling, have a little bit more fun, even then he's still kind of touching on things that are true to humanity, and true to humanity in a sense that we don't even know yet.
And still creating more of his tropes, because like you said with that, like, he connects with like the modem of like the supercomputer and stuff. That is more of like that man machine kind of thing, which you will see again, and you have seen in Videodrome, and we'll see in The Fly. There's like definitely like he is definitely still honing not only his craft but also his overall signature.
Yeah, Cronenberg is
what an auteur.
He's awesome. Auteur. Honestly, I think because I saw Scanners first.
It set a pretty high standard, I'm sure.
It did. It did.
And a certain expectation, considering that it is very different than his other films.
It really, really is. But I think one advantage of having seen that first is that I realized that, okay, I'm watching someone that even... I don't know how to put this. I was afraid going into this that I might not enjoy these movies. I was like, I know Cronenberg's like a huge deal in horror and in effects. And I know that I love History of Violence, for one thing, and even
you had
Eastern
seen
Promises.
A lot of his non-horror work, right?
Aside from like Maps to the Stars, I think I'd seen like all the other
Cosmopolis, right?
All the other movies that aren't like genre. Right. But I was like, what if I really don't like these like body horror, hoopla? But watching Scanners, I realized, no, this is someone who's actually like a really, really talented director. Not just for the movies that I've seen, but he also does these really interesting, horrific looks at humanity really well.
Yeah, I told you he's like the perfect guy to do this whole like filmography kind of series for.
Yeah. The fact that it all ties in together is really cool.
Yeah.
One way or another.
It's much different than doing Carpenter, who's just kind of chasing fancies, you know what I mean, this way and that way. He definitely, like Cronenberg, more than I would say any other director that I could recall, has like very specific things that he does over and over again. Like
the only other director I think that would be cool to like do this with, one we couldn't because I've seen a couple of his movies, but Lynch. But even then, I don't know if like there's all that much tying in from one movie to another.
Right, because they're so surreal. Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about that ending? You know what I mean, like the
duel thing.
The duel that ends with like, Vale being inside of Revok. And I almost read that as almost a cliffhanger. Like, I don't know if I entirely trust that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, same.
And that's more
because you don't know who really wins. Almost.
There's so many mutation is such a theme in this film. When you learn about the ephemeral, you learn that it's fetuses that are developing that, mutating into that. It's not somebody. It's not like an anomaly. It's a physically like a medically created thing.
Right. Yeah.
You see him. Kind of mold with the machine for the modem, you see him mutate into Revik, and you also see Obrist. She sort of projects herself as the one security guard's mother. There's a
Oh
lot,
yeah.
which is a wild.
Oh my
out of
God, I
left field
forgot
scene.
about that.
And it's
Yeah.
sort of like the only time she really like expresses her power in a big way.
I mean, that's certainly the most awesome example, I think.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I'm blanking. Like, what was the question? Like, what do I? Like we were
there's a lot
talking
of
about like
just,
the
like,
end
a lot
first,
of
but
mutations. I was saying mostly, but like, and then there's that final mutation where, he
we
turns
assume
into
that Vale
Revik.
turns into.
Yeah, and
And I
almost
think
read
it's
as a
safe to assume
cliffhanger.
because of like his eyes.
The
His eyes are
eyes.
blue now.
Yeah.
But that's exactly to go back to like the whole like staring at or becoming the beast kind of thing. He literally physically becomes the villain now.
And again, like,
And he had to destroy him. He had to destroy himself. He literally, his own body was destroyed throughout this duel.
I hate to keep bringing up Videodrome.
You love Videodrome.
I love Videodrome, of course, but
Yeah.
I just hate to bring it up on the episode that it's not on. But like again, he's playing with things that will later become, it's man turning into machine, man mutating, leaving the body, and
Flesh.
yes, long live the new flesh. And it's fun that like the scanner's essay actually ends with "Long live the new mind." That's the last.
Is that not a line from this anyway?
No.
Is it not? Not maybe not like the long live, because that's pretty clearly Videodrome.
Yeah.
But there's something related to like the new mind. I think, I don't know. I think it's a cool progression of seeing like you said the mutation. I didn't really like pick it up like that sense, like the phrase mutation or the concept of that. But it definitely does all culminate at the end where they have to fight each other. It's like a willpower thing, a duel of the mind. And as I mentioned, like Vale like literally he gets destroyed. And it's almost like a Jedi thing where like Obi-Wan, like I think maybe in order for everyone to win, he has to like sacrifice his whole entire body and just become part of the Force. Whereas here is like he has to like sacrifice his physical self so that he can actually infiltrate Revik's body. And I think that just carries on. I think if it is a cliffhanger, I think that the next installment basically shows that now Vale has become basically Revik.
No,
like he's a power hungry.
For the
I know, but I'm saying like if you're saying if it's in terms of a cliffhanger,
right.
I feel like the next step would be to see Vale become exactly what he was fighting against in the first place, just to carry on that motif of what you are fighting against. Sometimes you have to turn into.
Right, especially after there's, Revik revealing all that information, saying, like, you were created by this. We are something special. We are stronger than even the rest of them. We've got a whole lot of scanners coming along the way. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I could definitely see that being, like, the next logical progression.
And that he becomes, like, the leader of all
stories don't end when the movies do. You know what
Absolutely
I mean?
not.
Yeah. So.
I can't think of one story that does. Except for
super
maybe...
apocalyptic shit.
Yeah, I was going to say...
What's a movie that ends with the whole world ending?
Oh, hold on. A Friend for, like, the End of the World? A movie with, like, Steve Carell.
Yeah, the world actually ends at the end?
Spoiler alert.
Yeah? Sad.
Like, it was a stark ending. It was wild.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Yeah. It's worthwhile. I mean, I'm really not spoiling anything. The whole point of the movie is that the world's ending.
Yeah. Sure.
Oh, can I say one of my favorite lines from the movie?
Oh, yeah, of course.
I'm going to suck your brain dry.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Did that turn you on?
No.
Okay. Do you have anything else about scanners, man?
Scanners. Oh, my God. You know what's funny is that, like, I feel like we were... Like, I know I was up, like, to you, hyping up Scanners. I was like, man, I love this movie. And I know in this episode we were hyping up Scanners. And I feel like our analysis isn't quite as in-depth as the other movies.
I don't think it requires that much analysis. I don't think it begs that much analysis.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Is that like
maybe that's why you like it? Maybe that's why I like it, because this is my favorite Cronenberg
I don't know.
movie.
It's just like so fun. It's such a cool. It still has like like we say, like it has like a Cronenberg feel to it.
It's Cronenberg's popcorn flick.
But it's it's entertaining. Shit, I like to be entertained. I don't want to think all the freaking time when I watch movies. Of course, sometimes I just want to enjoy it.
But there is enough. There's enough to ponder on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's time for one of our favorite things to do here on Good Suffering.
Oh my God, what?
Arbitrary rankings.
Oh my God, I had a feeling. How am I supposed to do that though. I don't know.
For right now, and then we'll do the next set, and then.
Okay, there's one thing. One thing I do know. Least favorite, obviously, Rabid.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Then the other movies, they're drastically different from one another.
Okay.
I can't do it.
God damn.
They're
it.
so great for
You're
different
disappointing
reasons.
our audience.
Oh my god.
They come here for arbitrary lists and sexual references, and your sultry voice.
Oh my god. Well, hello everyone. Let's see. Okay, fine. I'm gonna do it. Whatever. Rip off the Band-Aid. Rabid. Bottom.
Oh, you're going bottom up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
As much as I loved it, Shivers.
Okay.
It's the way it came out, chronological, Brood, and then Shivers. Scanners.
Okay.
Although I really do see, the thing is, like, the Brood and Scanners are like neck and neck for me, and I don't think that Shivers is like the second to last out of these movies. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's a terrible movie that deserves to be near the bottom, and I don't think that Scanners is all that much better than the Brood.
I think that I would hold the same ranking, but I mean, it's been a minute since I watched The Brood, and honestly, it's given it a run for its money. I really, really, really love The Brood. Like, I've honestly found new things to appreciate with all of these movies. It's just kind of the thing that keeps me doing this podcast is that every time I rewatch one of these movies, I have, my opinion changes, even if it's just a little bit.
I thought it was the obligation to the fans that kept you coming back.
Fuck the fans.
Oh my god.
I don't owe you shit.
Oh my god. Stop right now. Please. All three of our fans are not listening.
Play. Child's Play, best episode.
That was not our best episode.
That's absolutely our best episode. That's peak Good Suffering. We'll never top that, and that hurts.
But I do get that. I mean, at least for us, for me, I get to like watch awesome new movies that I haven't seen before, and you get to learn something new about the movies.
Reassess some of these movies. Yeah, because I've watched Shivers and Rabid and Scanners pretty recently, but The Brood, it's been a minute since I've visited. It's been at least a couple years. So
it's been a while.
It's been a while. Shouts out to
Trapped.
No, that's with an S. Stained. Shouts out to Stained.
Oh, Trapped is Headstrong.
Headstrong, I'll take you on. Yeah.
Headstrong to take on anyone.
And who does cut my? It's Papa Roach.
Yeah.
God damn it! There's so many of those same ass bands. It's
So
all
good.
the same.
I
Fucking
love
music.
that era of music.
Christ. But yeah, I would say I'd probably hold the same ranking. But The Brood.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
By the next time we record the next episode, I might come back and be like, no, The Brood is my favorite Cronenberg movie. Or I could sit here and say one of the ones that we're about to watch. Although I have watched all of the following movies very recently.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, Lorenzo.
Do you have anything else to say on Scanners?
No.
Then let's talk about what movies we're doing next.
Woo! Yes.
Segue.
So now we're going to get into the sort of golden age of Cronenberg. We are going to get into some of his biggest features. We're going to start off with Videodrome, which comes out 2 years after this, 1983.
Debbie Harry.
Yes, always wonderful Debbie Harry. And then we are going to move on to, if I'm not mistaken, The Dead Zone.
Stephen King.
His Stephen King adaptation. Then his remake of The Fly, starring Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis.
Man, fuck Jeff Goldblum, man.
And then we're going to finally wrap everything up with the incredibly disturbing and unique Dead Ringers.
Dead Ringers, which you have a fantastic poster.
I will definitely try to post that somewhere on our
I'm going to take
media.
a picture of it and post it. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
Because I don't trust you.
You're fair not to.
Yeah. Even though I haven't been doing a great job of posting things on our social media. But that's about to change.
You're doing great,
That's about to change. Like we said in the beginning of the episode, 2019, new wave.
You're not going to be able to get rid of us, fuckers.
Totally new wave. Just like Devo.
And if
They're not new wave.
And if you want to be...
Are they new wave? Yeah.
And if you want to be on that wave, on that new wave, on the new wave of the new flesh, then you got to follow us on all of our social media.
All of it.
We are on Twitter at good_suffering. We are on Instagram at Good Suffering Podcast. And you can find us on Facebook at Good Suffering: a horror podcast.
I got to say, though, maybe Facebook, I don't know.
I'm like the one who runs the Facebook.
Yeah,
I
and
like having a Facebook.
I'm not.
I like
I'm not big on
Facebook.
Facebook. I'm really not big on Facebook at all.
Yeah, and
As
you're
a
the social media guy, and I'm
as
not.
a social media, like I don't see the point. Facebook has been dwindling like significantly.
Don't forget to
Whatever.
leave us a rating and a review wherever you're listening to this now. And thank you. And once again, back, hopefully better than ever.
Oh my God, absolutely better than ever.
This has been Good Suffering.